This weekend, we got to do a little bit of indoor buggy racing, guys. It was a small crowd, but as usual, it was a great time. My laps on the on-road course have definitely been paying off to my overall RC driving ability. I'm Chad, this is the Dorky and 40 RC channel. Let's go faster today. Now, we made great progress this week, but we still don't have the skills to pay the bills. But if you want to help that out, you can do your thing by subscribing down below, like button, comment. I also have affiliate links to Amazon down there if you wish to make any purchases. So we ran the B6 4 in two classes, 21.5 just stock, which is what is in here, and also 21.5 open. If you're interested in seeing how this thing is built and the setup that I got going on in there, please check the video in the description below. Playing right here, you can see that we go through all this on the bench. So all that info is there for you. And then of course you guys can always reach out to me here on the channel. Only thing that we did different this week as far as addition to the car is we did go with the new to me, J Concepts body, which is a little bit lighter and a little bit lower and more of a like cab 4 type of design. And yeah, just trying to do something a little bit different, fresh coat of paint. So the whole point of these videos is to show you what a not so good beginner type of racer is going through and the setups that I do and things that can hopefully get you guys going in the right direction as well. A lot of the YouTube videos are either too dumbed down or way up here usually, and they're not for like us average people. Like, we don't really race with average people, and the whole thought of novice classes and stuff are bad. It just doesn't seem to work out. So we got to help each other go faster. So Dialed, which is a actual program that can give you setup sheets and advice, is usually setup sheets for super fast cars, not these basic 21.5 type of buggies that we are running indoors on smaller tracks. So let's get started on things. The first thing is, I talked about earlier, is running all the laps for the past like 3 months with that GT12 car up here, or one of them. We'll talk about that in another video coming up. Getting used to just driving a car left and right, throttle management. I have been forced to learn how to drive a car with that thing, and it has really helped out. I know it sounds like a silly thing, but turning laps is just the most important thing. And what I was anxious to see this week was if turning laps on that would actually make things good with the buggy. And it did, for sure. Now, the other thing, of course, is you want to have a decent setup. You don't want the complete opposite setup that you need for like your track or something, or you're just going to be frustrated because your buggy's going to be bouncing around everywhere, or your GT12 is going to be doing this and that, whatever. So the biggest thing for me, of course, has been getting used to the San Juan remote, and I talked about it a lot in a couple videos before. Getting the right springs, spring tension, and everything else set up on the steering wheel and the trigger. And I've got that all figured out now. Everything is just beautiful. I love it the way it is. Got the right hand grip on there. Comes with multiple size hand grips. Can't underestimate the connection between you and your controller and the car, how much of a difference that really does make. There's a couple settings inside the San Juan that I changed as well. Biggest is going to be the feeling setting. Turning down that feeling setting, I believe, adds a little bit of latency to the control pack. So that way you're not really losing your high quality fast FH5 link, but what you're doing is just basically dumbing down the car a little bit. So it's got weird numbers. It's like 7S is the default, and it goes all the way down to 1S being like the slowest, and you can totally feel the delay. I usually run around 6 or 5, just enough to take the edge off. And what that allows me to do is not do dumb things that are going to mess up my actual feel with the car, like adding a ton of expo into it, or trying to do other things with throttle curves or steering curves or anything else. On my buggy, I actually just ran a 0.5 on there just to get rid of any kind of like dual band of deadband issues or something in the middle of the remote, even though there doesn't seem to be any, but that's just kind of something I added in there. Other than that, getting my endpoint adjustments correct for make sure I wasn't overcorrecting and the car wasn't turning too much and circling around. You know, I chopped my endpoints to, I think, like 96 worked out pretty good on this track. And I think that's something that you might have to change depending upon track to track, week to week, and stuff like that. A hairpin's a hairpin, but obviously our steering rates and everything else will change. Dual rate, I actually have it 100, which is probably a bad thing. What that is telling me is that the Buggy still does not have enough steering. I probably should be able to knock that dual rate down a little bit. I didn't actually try it because I tried some other things we'll go over that I had success with. So I just pretty much left it at that 100% dual rate. So that's pretty much it with the remote. So let's dive into the race program and the car, and we'll talk about that. Now, the first thing we did, of course, when we get to the track is get the pit all set up, get our batteries warmed up and juicing. They've been in storage mode in the BATSAFE. If you don't have a BATSAFE, you need to get one. I got a link down below. Protect your home from LiPo fires. I had a LiPo go up a couple months ago right back here. So those things are protected. No more of that nonsense. Of course, there is one sitting right here. So do as I say, not as I do. First thing we did is I did notice that I needed to work on gearing. So we went through gearing changes for the first couple hours before the actual race started. And I noticed that I was getting a little bit of push, not enough steering, going around a couple corners. So once I found pretty much the right gearing I was going to stick with, the very first thing I did was I removed a couple of the 1mm shims from the front of the ball stud mount here. Now this front ball stud mount on the 6.4 is actually shaved down about 2mm. So I really just added about 1mm and then took that back off. This is kind of like a consensus thing that a lot of people are doing. You see it a lot on YouTube, and it really does work when it comes to increasing the steering. Now, alternatively, the other thing that you could do is you could actually add to the inner ball stud mounts here in the back and raise the rear roll center. So I decided that just doing this up front was good enough and that I didn't need to add anything to the back. That gave me enough steering and everything was good to go. Now, the other thing that I noticed during warm up was I wanted to try to carry as much corner speed as I could, letting off the trigger. I'm not the best with throttle management still. On our smaller tracks, especially when it comes to hairpins and stuff, I rely on drag brake, but you want to find the right drag brake amount. You don't want enough drag brake where it's going to upset the car and the car is going to start diving into the corners and the rear end is going to lift up. So that way, when you come back on power, you're going to have less steering because of the transfer. You know, when we're on carpet and we have so much grip, it's all about really managing that throttle and not trying to upset the car as much. So I tried it without drag brake, with a lot of drag brake, and I settled for me a little bit in the middle, which I think was about 10%. 20 was too much. 5 wasn't enough. 10% worked out really good with the gearing and everything else that I did. So before we get into the race breakdown and show things that are actually going on and what helped and what hurt, we'll talk about some things that I want to change before the next meet. And that basically is going to be reducing some weight on the B64. Now, I've got pretty much every weight reduction item that you can have on this thing. It was pretty much a no bolt holds barred build, everything down to the bearings, aluminum nuts, all of the carbon fiber pieces, all that kind of stuff. But if you look closely, you're going to see a big brass weight here underneath the battery. And I have the steel weight here and the steel weight here. So there is around 100 and some grams right there that I can get rid of. Now, some classes in the 21.5 stock and everything will have minimum weights because the whole point of the stock class is to try to keep it competitive with everybody. But we don't run our just stock that way. At least no one's ever enforced anything when it comes to a minimum weight restriction or anything else. So when I see that I'm still a second off the pace, I know that I could probably make up some of that time by better driving and stuff, But when it comes to everything else, I just need to make the car lighter and faster and work on gearing and of course myself. So we're going to remove some of those weights, and I think that is also what is going to ultimately help us turn a little bit faster lap time. So we're not going to go out and buy batteries. We're not going to do anything, crazy like that. We're going to keep everything going. So the one thing I did notice throughout the day was a couple different screws were coming loose. These front bulkhead screws right here going into this stuff, I've never seen that, but both of these were loosening up. The 6/4 steering underneath here, the blue metal stuff, I would basically have to turn this all the way over and tighten that little screw up right there a little bit. That was coming loose, and just kind of little things like that were going on all day. The battery weight, of course, just kind of goes in there. And if I have a problem with the car whenever I'm racing it next time, and I think that I need to add a little bit more weight to get some stability, adding these brass plates, which come in 26 and I think 40 something right underneath the battery, should help out. The other cool thing that I tried, which just didn't work on this track, was these new wide tires from J Concepts. Now, I think these are really going to be good on like turf tracks and all that stuff, but you can see that there's the same size for a two-wheel drive front buggy, but they're actually wider, and they've got some foam inserts inside there. So pretty cool. Always nice to have a little something fun to try, but didn't like the way they were working, so we just went ahead and ran the race without them. All right, so let's take a look here at one of my heats, and this was a 21.5 open. So these guys are running no timing, fixed motors, and I have the 21.5 just stock system. So you can see, compared to any of my buggy driving before, that my car and my driving is relatively straight. Now, right there was a problem, and that's one of the things that we want to talk about here real quick, is that we've got to keep the steering wheel straight, hands off the wheel when we are landing on jump faces. If you're going to land and your wheels are turned, you're going to hit something every single time. At a really good time, most of the time on the wall ride. Wall rides are usually pretty tough for me, but it wasn't too bad at all. I had a couple instances that were bad, but all in all, definitely made pretty good lines around there and set everything up. Now, the track this week was set up to be really fast. I think my hot lap was around 11.1, and I think most people were definitely a second faster. I think somebody during warm-ups ran like a 9-second with a 21.5, of course, juiced up. So maybe we'll think about swapping that out, but I kind of like the just stock. So again, you can see right there, same mistake. Got to learn to keep the hand off the wheel when landing jumps. So those are going to kill me every time. Luckily, it didn't really hurt me a whole lot marshalling, but if you see that door straight ahead over there, there's a little pitfall that you can fall into there, and I may or may have not landed inside that pitfall once or twice. So we'll keep watching the race here and talking about other things. This hairpin right there that we just went around was probably the most difficult thing for me. So it's coming off throttle, letting the drag brake work, and then trying to get back on throttle as much as possible. For some reason, I would grip roll or something like that right there, and it just didn't work out. You put probably a little bit of less dual rate, I would be able to make that, but trying to carry as much speed as possible. So I'm trying to think about ways that I could actually change the car to get around that a little bit better. Running about 1 degree of camber right now, so I could increase my camber a little bit. But I think if I decreased the camber right there and went to maybe like 1.5 or 2, I would, take away a little bit of the contact patch and therefore loosen up the grip a little bit. I don't know how it would affect everywhere else in the track, but that's something that I didn't change. All I wanted to do is just make minor changes and just drive the car today and turn laps. But that's something there in the future that I believe that I could do. Our tracks usually do have a lot of hairpins, but for some reason that one there just always got me. But you could see all in all, just all the changes that I was talking about and all the driving that I've been doing with the GT12, just turning laps again has really helped improve my skills. Also finding the right gear. Now, at the very end of the race, one of the last mains, I did decide to make some changes by kind of raising my body, the chassis height a little bit. I was all the way down to like 13 millimeters. I raised it up to like a strong 14, close to 15, just thinking that maybe on these little bumps or something, my car was getting upset a little bit coming around that big full power on power sweeper. And I wanted to stay on power the whole time, even though I could hear in the other heats that people were letting off and going back on throttle. But when you have a problem with throttle control, you don't want to have to do it if you do not have to. So obviously the proper way is to kind of come on and off throttle a little bit around those bumps, especially the one that will be coming up, not right here, but right here on the corner. So that way the car just doesn't kick out the right way. And if you come back on throttle in the wrong place, then you're going to kind of kick out and wash out anyway. So what do you guys think? All in all, I'm super happy. I love racing indoor carpet buggy stuff. It's just kind of like a mindless fun because you can just kind of bash around and just have a great time. You can, the cars don't break as often. Of course you can break things, but it's just a great time. You're there with your friends. It's a lot more relaxing than the GT12 stuff. The GT12 stuff is super fun, but in between heats, we might have a 45-minute to an hour and you are working constantly on doing things with your tires, checking screws and everything. We're talking a few minutes here of work into the buggy, making sure everything's solid, working on the batteries a little bit, and everything is good. And at the end of the day, we finished in 3rd place. Now, of course, there were only 4 of us, and Pirelli did fall out there. So who knows what would have happened, but hey, I will take it. That's the first time I've ever been up there with a buggy. A second off the pace, 2 or 3 laps down compared to my usual 5 or 6 laps. You can see that, of course, my driving has a little bit more to improve, and that's just going to come over time. So we're hopeful, and we will see what's going on. So hopefully all these little tips helped you guys out, and hit me up if you got any questions, and thanks for coming with me on this little adventure. Peace.